I have Robert Tuller with me today. He's the director of the Symphony Orchestra here at BYU-Idaho. Robert, thanks for joining me today.
You're welcome.
How are you today?
I'm good.
Good. Thanks for joining us. So, Brother Tuller, before we kind of get into more about what's going on this week, give us a little bit of background just for listeners that may not know you as well on your position with the orchestra and kind of, I guess, your responsibilities, how long you've been with it, that
Sure.
kind of thing.
I actually, this is my fourth university teaching position, and I came here the first year of BYU-Idaho with Elder Bednar in 2001. And I've been teaching cello here, directing the symphony orchestra, and the University Baroque Ensemble as well.
Wow, that's incredible. So you've been all around a lot.
Yes.
That's awesome. So how has been, being the director of, a big orchestra like that, how has that been compared to the other roles that you've had since you've been at the university?
Sure. Well, symphony orchestra is we consider that the premier string-based ensemble, though it has students from the wind and percussion and area as well. It's by audition, which means it represents some of the finest student musicians we have here at BYU-Idaho. It's been very rewarding because they do really nice work. They're very accomplished. Many of them are music majors. Many aren't, but they all play at a very high level. And as a result, we get to play some really fantastic music. That's been really rewarding. A different size group. It's a larger group. In a fall semester, it'll typically be 60, 70 people in that ensemble. The Baroque ensemble that I direct is considerably more specific, very much centered around music from the 18th century or 17th century, and it's considerably smaller, 12, 15 to 20 students, and much more specific kind of a genre, which I've really enjoyed being able to do here. We're unique in that way that they have me do those kinds of disparate ensembles.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So give us a general rundown, especially for people that may not know much about it, about the event that's going on this week.
Sure.
This week.
This is the second of two events for Symphony Orchestra. We just performed on October 30th and finished that concert and then got right back to work with this one. Difficult music. This one's some really favorite music of mine. And, I tend to program stuff I like. I mean, that's the privilege that I get to be here. Yeah. But so this performance is centered around three works. The first is by a German composer immigrated to England by the name of Max Richter. And that one's called On the Nature of Daylight. It's a short work. It's actually quite evocative, beautiful, very minimal and very simple. But people probably will recognize it because it becomes almost a cultural thing because it's been used in probably 20 plus movies in the last couple of decades when it was written, just because of the sound of it is very interesting. We're going to open the concert with that. The second concert's by American composer Howard Hanson. Howard Hanson, in the middle part of the 20th century, was the director of the Eastman School of Music, and he really took that school as to one of the premier schools for music in the United States in that part of the century. He's European trained, but an American composer. This particular work, the Fourth Symphony, is called his Requiem Symphony. It's not performed as much as the other works on the program, but it's very beautiful. When it was premiered in the mid-1940s, it was during World War II, which was, very appropriate with a requiem, or essentially what he's making reference to as a mass for the dead, essentially. However, his inspiration was maybe a little more personal. It was on the death of his father he wrote this piece. And when it was premiered, it actually won the Pulitzer Prize that year in music as well. So it was, highly regarded in his time, and he considered it his best work. It's basically a requiem symphony. Typically a requiem is a choral piece of music because it has text from the Latin Mass, specifically a funeral mass, essentially. And while there's no text in this piece because it's only instruments, he's taken inspiration from four movements of the requiem to kind of evoke that. Probably the most, I would say the most iconic movement would be the Dies Irae, which is the Day of Judgment. And typically composers, when they set a Dies Irae, they really go after it. And Howard Hanson's the same way. It's a very interesting, very colorful, and very aggressive work, But perhaps, most beautifully, he ends with a Lux Aeterna, or Eternal Light movement, which is very beautiful, very stirring. And you get a real sense of his, the impact of his father's death in this piece. Yeah. The last piece on the program will be the best known for classical music audiences. Igor Stravinsky, iconic Russian composer, and the piece is his Firebird, the suite from his Firebird ballet. Even if you don't know the Firebird ballet, you will recognize the closing section of it for sure. This piece of music for Stravinsky was sort of a breakthrough. In the early part of the 19th century, he was still a young composer, and he received a commission from the Russian ballet, which was at the time the premier dance ballet company in the world, to do this work. In fact, he thought he wasn't qualified, but the director encouraged him, and the success was so immediate, it really put him on the map. And it got him to Paris, which was the musical center of the world back then as well. And the Firebird is just a wonderful work based on a Russian based on Russian folk themes. It's colorful, it's masterful in orchestration. It uses very rhythmic and very provocative in the kinds of rhythms, and then ultimately with the finale in the last movement, just beautiful and heroic. It's an iconic work in orchestral music, and so and the students love it because it's like, oh, I get to play the Firebird. It's like I only wish you could play the music like that all the time, and so it's definitely an icon of orchestral repertoire from the early part of the 20th century.
Yeah, thank you for sharing all that, and especially the background. Just for people that might not know as much about it. It's really cool to just, get a deeper background and learn more about it. You said that you guys already performed in October.
Yes.
How often does the Symphony Orchestra perform at BYU-Idaho?
They'll typically do two large performances a semester, though sometimes more. In the past, they've also been involved with the BYU-Idaho Christmas, though the Symphony Orchestra as an ensemble is not doing that this year, though there are members of it involved in this one this year. But so sometimes we'll perform additional concerts. Like next semester, for example, we'll have a performance early in the semester, and then we'll turn around and accompany the opera production in the Snow Drama Theater. And so that sometimes happens as well, which means they'll perform quite a bit more than 2 times in the semester because they run that. I think they do 9 performances of that or something. So it's a busy schedule for a student, but it's a very rewarding ensemble and at a high level too.
Yeah, I'm sure they, while you mentioned it can be stressful, it's very time consuming. It's also probably just great to have that many opportunities to showcase that skill, right?
Yeah, it's a great experience for those students.
So, I would love for you to just maybe tell us a little bit about maybe kind of rehearsals, but also just the work in general that has gone into organizing the orchestra and everything that's gone on in putting this event on, because it's a big deal.
Yeah. Well, at the beginning of the semester, we audition, and because we're in this unique 3-track system, we actually audition a new orchestra every semester because the students on different tracks change, and so the students have to audition every semester for it. We do that on the first day of classes. For me personally, I have to choose what repertoire I'm going to do, actually usually semester before, even sometimes a year in advance. Certain works, like for example, the Howard Hanson is not in the public domain, which means that it has to be rented and that has to be arranged. You can't kind of turn on a dime for stuff like that. So we have to be out a year knowing what we're going to do. And sometimes that's a little scary because I don't always know what my students' qualifications are going to be, and yet they always rise to the occasion. And so it's a challenge for them. So anyway, we start that and then we begin the process. And typically we'll get about 9 rehearsals, and then a concert is how it generally works. I have a lot of help with other members of the music faculty as well. Sister Elizabeth Crawford is a great bassoonist and woodwind specialist, and she coaches the woodwind students in the ensemble. Of course, my expertise is strings, and I also have help from Brother Matt Moore, who is a brass specialist, and he also does some coaching. Both Elizabeth and Matt know a lot about orchestral style, and they help those students as well. So I get some help through the process as well, even though ultimately the buck stops with me in those rehearsals. And then we put on a concert, and it's kind of like, exam time in a way, The thing that's been interesting about this last performance is, especially with the difficulties of Stravinsky's Firebird, which is has considerable difficulties for each of the individuals in the ensemble. I've only had 6 rehearsals for it. And so that's almost more like what the professional orchestras get. They typically get 4 on something like this. And so these guys we're asking a lot, and they're doing a really nice job.
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that with us. And how is just, I guess, the response usually from, the crowd, the student body, the community that comes and sees the show?
Usually symphony orchestra, because it's a large group, is well attended. So we usually fill the Barris Concert Hall, and people are always enthusiastic. In fact, it's gratifying for the students to, the last performance we did on October 30th, again, some difficult music, and the audience really responded well to what they did. And I think the students didn't quite believe that, oh yeah, I did this, and people recognized what I did. And so our audience is really supportive in that way, and it's been rewarding to be able to perform for a BYU-Idaho audience. And that, of course, includes students, but it also includes a faculty and area community, and then, of course, friends and family that attend as well. And we also stream those performances live, and that's so a lot of people tune in who may not be able to come a distance, family back home or whatever.
Mm-hmm. And you can find those live streams on BYU-Idaho's website, correct?
Exactly. If you go to the music department page, you can find the live stream page, and yeah, those are done, like I said, live. So we don't stream it on demand because we don't have the right to do that with the music. But it's definitely done at the moment. And I would mention that stream is at a very high quality. The people that produce that do a beautiful job with the audio and video. It's really well done.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that with us. So especially for just obviously for people that are more familiar with classical music, with the orchestra, that kind of thing, but more so for people that maybe don't know as much about it. If you're, sending out an invitation to people on why they should come, why they should attend the orchestra, what would you say? Well,
I would say that especially this concert, the music that I've chosen is very universal. It's difficult for them to perform this music, but it's not difficult music to listen to. I believe, like with the Howard Hanson Symphony, even if you didn't know what it was about, you'll get something out of it because it's stirring, it's beautiful, it's emotional. And the Firebird, like I said, again, the same thing. There's a reason why it is iconically, considered in the 20th century. And Stravinsky himself, he talked about how, it was his most popular work, and he said, he used to perform it regular, and he says, as a conductor, I probably did it 1,000 times in my career, literally. It's like, so these are universally regarded pieces that speak easily to someone, even without a musical background. That universal language of music is very obvious in these pieces. And I try to provide a lot of information. We have a very fine program annotator that basically gives us notes, and I provide those at the concert and also for the streaming audience in PDF format. So if you want to, you can get the information you need at the performance or while you're watching so that you can get a little more out of it with really nice descriptions as well.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for that. And Brother Tuller, if you could just give us one last rundown of just a reminder of when the concert is,
sure.
Where it is, any costs associated, and then dress code or anything like
sure. that. Sure. So performance is November 20th, Thursday, 7:30 p.m. in the Barris Concert Hall. We ask for event dress. That's a request. The performance cost, I believe, is $8 or $5 for students. Also, that live stream is available if you go to, BYU-Idaho's website, /music, and you can find it there as well at 7:30.
Okay, awesome. Well, sweet. Anything else that you would add, Brother Tuller?
No, thanks for your time today.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us.